Internet, I don't know if the internet is. Is it?
Yeah, I found out about it. It's not something that it's just.
Today the internet is just totally crap. And I'm blaming telecom.
Yeah, that the thing is not just local.
It's going around and round and round.
Is the thing?
It's fine. There's nothing wrong over there. Okay, now it opens.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Somebody's saying.
You have Zoom open.
Hello, hello. Are you hearing?
Yes, we're hearing you, Professor.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Professor.
Colleagues, friends, brothers, Murphy's Law always works. At the wrong time, of course. We're having an internet connectivity problem. Apparently, it's countrywide. So that was one issue, compounding other issues. But we seem to make some connection now, some alternative. So I hope we can continue uninterruptedly. This evening, I want to welcome all of you and to thank you for your patience. Technology is something that is very useful, but when it fails, it carries down everything. Thank you much again for your waiting and for being patient. Today we have a very interesting program that will look at basically concerns of education, health, food technology, food security, production, and these are issues that concerns the youth because they are the future. And if Africa is going to make the transition that is necessary, then we have to make sure that the youth are prepared from now to take leadership, that the education system is transformed, because Garvey said that we need education as the driver, but not just any education. It has to be education that fits the country's need and the continent's need. And that education has to be redefined by the Africans themselves. Technology is not just for consumption, it's for value addition. And we cannot be just consumers of the technology. We have to create technology. And we have enough time, we have enough skill on Africa. They are building other countries' technology bank and technology base. So we have to use that resource to Africa's benefit. We have a disease that is killing everybody, and Africa is dependent. With all the technologists have, we are still dependent on others. So these are the issues that the youth and the panel will be looking at in trying to carve an Africa that is self-reliant, that is independent as far as possible, and that will utilize African resources as much as is possible. So today, we are going to look at these events, and we're going to start with, we had planned a program which has to be disrupted because our partner NBC had a total crash at the last minute, and so we have had to make an adjustment without the support that we had that is lost. So we are piggybacking on our Jamaican partner to guide us through. Is Dr. Duncan here?
Yes, hi, I'm here. Thank you so much.
Oh, okay. We have our first speaker, in the name of Dr. Duncan, who is going to lead us on this discussion.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Duncan.
Thank you. Yes.
Sorry, Dr. Dunkley. Dr. Dunkley.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And greetings and salutations to everyone, especially those who are on the continent of Mama Africa and in the Caribbean. I just came back from Jamaica on Sunday, and I'm back in the United States. I wanted just to, first of all, acknowledge the belated birthday of the Right Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And as I think about the theme, this concept of African unity and the spinal cord, the issues that I would like to raise today, and let me acknowledge Doreen Buchanan, who's not here, but certainly her team and everyone from the Jamaica Diaspora magazine. And also I represent 14 states in the Northeast, United States. I'm bringing forward that energy today. My response, especially in the comments mentioned by our most honored or honorable moderator, is that as we think about the teachings of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, and as we think about the state of Africa and the African diaspora, because Africa is in us, because we're all coming out of Africa. 3 areas concern me. The first I want to raise is that in terms of our own liberation, whether it's economic liberation or political or even religious liberation, because again, Black people on this earth is the only people where we worship a God that does not resemble us, does not look like our image for the majority of those of us who practice Christianity. We have been given a picture of a blue-eyed Jesus. So just in terms of all of these concepts and all of these frames, I want to talk about education. For me, I'm very disheartened, especially as an educator, that we're still not teaching Marcus Garvey and his teachings in all of our institutions, from whether it's the primary grades through to the college level, because the way that we think and what we input in our minds lies the liberation of our people and our children. I had the opportunity when we were leading a panel discussion with Dr. Garvey, son of the Right Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, Dr. Julius Garvey, and I asked the young lady, who is a second generation Jamaican, did she know who Marcus Mosiah Garvey was? And she had no idea. And this feedback and this lack of knowledge and this high level of ignorance among our children is not unusual. And the first point that I have to raise is that we have to teach our children about their history and their culture. And we cannot rely on only the institutions in these countries to do so, because a liberated people, a conscious people, must have its own institutions to pass on knowledge through the generations. So my first point of conversation to this group today, and especially on this forum, is to say that we need to have restoration back to Africa in terms of the teaching of Garvey, so that wherever we are in the world, we will become and be liberated in our minds. And if our minds and thoughts are liberated, then our actions will follow. And that is number one. I also want to just share with this panel that I work on school reviews, and I went to a school that's predominantly Asian, predominantly Indian and Spanish. And their literacy anchor, this was a middle school in the United States, that's grade 6, 7, and 8. Their literacy anchor was different quotes of Marcus Mosiah Garvey. So here were these what we would call phenotypically African or Black children. You had Asian and predominantly white Latino, as well as Indian children, learning about Marcus Garvey and using his teachings as their anchor text in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And our children, whether they're in the Caribbean or even in other institutions, they have no knowledge of Marcus Garvey. So I'm burning a fire on that, and I'm crying shame, and we have to do better. So we need restoration, and that's important. And I said, Stephen said we're teaching Garveyism in the schools. So I think, Stephen, that is good to hear. In Jamaica, I'm talking, and just in terms of scale, that we scale it also, especially to those of us who are outside of the Caribbean and in other pockets of the diaspora, because all of Africa is certainly ours. And that takes me to my second conversation, is about scaling. It's how we scale Black liberation and Black teachings, and how we embed it in our institutions, whether it's our financial institutions and our economic institutions or political institutions. Right now, we have a complacent people. We are one of the few people on the planet where anything will do. You can do anything to us as Black people, and even after maybe we raise a little sound, and then our memories become short. And that's partly because we're exhausted, because we have had 400 years of this continued onslaught. But I'm just saying that we need to scale our response around African unity. We need to really big up Africa, our children and their children. The perception is that Africa is this place of jungle and uncivilization, and we know that that is not true, because the choir is here to testify that while we have these images of Africa out in the globe, we know that Asians and everyone else now have been in Africa and are recolonizing Africa. And so when we talk about African unity, it's not just a continent. I think we have to think about the wider Africa diaspora as well. And so it's restoration and it's scaling. And I know I was warned not to go over 8 minutes, so I'll just be brief. The third piece is a piece that we need, that I'm going to call it redemption. And these are my words. So we need to restore ourselves. We need to scale. And I love that Stephen said, not in Jamaica. Okay, I'll check out that link, Stephen Golden. I'm such a fan of yours. I just want to talk about redemption. I think that our African unity requires healing. We need to heal ourselves in terms of the Africa diaspora. I know when I speak to even some of my biological family members, they'll tell you they're not African. African, them sell them in slavery. And so I want to talk about redemption. We need a road to redemption. We need healing among our communities because we are experiencing trauma from slavery and the ongoing oppression of our people and how we treat each other. And I think we have to continue to create these spaces. That's why I'm so grateful today for spaces like these that are very healing. So it's restoration, scaling, and redemption. So on that note, I'm going to revert to our honorable moderator and to thank you for listening to my thoughts today. I'm in the struggle every day for the liberation of our people and of our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dunkley, for leading the way. And I hope that you will be able to participate in the discussion that follows. We have a discussion panel that was composed from Jamaica and Namibia. In that panel, we have Mrs. Evelyn Schlamba. Are you there? Just show your hand. Okay. We have Mushutu Mukwani. Mushutu Mukwani. Are you there? Is Mr. Mukwani there? No. Okay. We have Mr. Nestor Dandalda. Are you there? Mr. Nestor Dandada. Nimilik. Donald there? Hello? Dr. Ngore, are you there? Okay. We seem to have lost the panelists. So we're going to request from the audience who would like to be on the panel. We have 4 spaces with Dr. Dunkley and Mrs. Shilamba.
I'm on the panel.
Taylor, I am in Ethiopia. And myself, I am in Ethiopia. Ambassador Jasmine, I would like to be on the panel.
Okay. Is there two others?
Mr. Barnett, this is Kamal Mahako. I'm scheduled to be on the panel.
You are scheduled to be on the panel?
Yes.
Okay. Who is that?
Kamal Mahako.
Mahaku.
Yes.
Okay. It's okay. We need one more to complete the panel list.
If there's a space, I could come forward. I could present something.
Okay. So you are okay. I'm going to request Evelyn Chilamba to lead the panel. So Evelyn, you have Dr. Dunkley. You have Ambassador Yasmin. We have can you show your hands for me, please? Those who are on the panel. Your name is not appearing, okay? Alexis Kenneth.
Come on,
Mosiah. I'm not getting your name, madam.
Kamal Mahako.
Kamal Mahako.
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Okay, Kamal. And the other person that has joined the panel? Hello?
Is that me?
Roots Crew?
Yes, Roots Crew. I'm Veunja Shingaite from Namibia. Can you hear me? Pro.
The fourth person?
Could you hear me, Pro?
Fourth person?
Do you have Ambassador Jasmine in that lineup?
Yes, Ambassador Jasmine, yes. The name of the fourth person?
Roots Crew is the fourth person, Professor Earl.
Yes, I have Roots Crew. I have Roots Crew.
Okay.
Okay, so we have four names. We have Roots Crew, we have Jasmine, Ambassador Jasmine, we have Karu, Mahaku, and we have Evelyn Chilamba and Dr. Dunkley. Okay.
Okay, I see.
Okay. We are trying to patch up a bad job here. We've lost all the records. Okay, so the topic that we're going to be discussing is the Africa we want. And the issues, the sub-issues we're looking at are education, technology, food security, production, and their self-reliance and the control and management of own resources. I have pleasure now to pass the to Evelyn Chombo, who is going to coordinate this panel. We have 45 minutes, after which we'll try to get some resolutions or proposals, working proposals that we will propose for our various governments from the youth. And that will be followed by an interlude of culture. And then the closing remarks by the chair of the National Council on Reparation, Davis Mattis. So over to you, Evelyn.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Good morning, and I wish last night we had a great discussion. I wish Chaplain was here to perhaps say a prayer for us before we start. Is he available?
Okay, Evelyn.
He's not?
Evelyn,
okay.
Evelyn, 1 second. Evelyn.
Yes.
Since the panel is mostly composed now, I would just kindly ask each person to give a short stay of themselves, a short stay, so that we know who is speaking.
Okay. Please. Should I start with myself?
Yes, please.
My name is Evelyn Shilamba. I'm a board member of the Pan-African Center of Namibia. Yeah, and I am here in Namibia. Welcome to you all. Yes. Prof. Taylor?
Yes.
I'm not sure who is speaking. Who is in control of muting and giving access to people to speak?
They just need to unmute their mic.
The house.
Okay. I kindly request that we all please adhere to the rules of the house. If you do not have the floor, please mute your mic so that when your family members are busy in the background, they do not disturb the discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sister.
So we were in the process of introducing ourselves.
Technical support, so we have to we're trying to do what we can. I no technical support from the
Okay.
NDC. They're
Okay.
I'm trying to do the best.
I think I have, or was my introduction too short, or should I, or do I have to say more? Because I've done my part, Prof. Maybe the other panelists can introduce themselves.
Just ask the others, because you have introduced yourself many times before, so just.
And Dr. Dunkley just finished speaking. I think everybody who was here have already heard her. Maybe I can call upon the other panelists who have not introduced themselves, please, to kindly do so.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm
Okay,
Kamama Hako. I am the principal of Kemet Mosiah Academy and the author of the Marcus Garvey workbooks, the Garveyite workbooks, for schools from ages 6, beginner, intermediate, and advanced.
And you are based where, sister?
Pardon me?
You are based where?
Oh, I am from Kingston, Jamaica.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mosiah. Okay, greetings. I am Ambassador Jasmine Rowe. I am based in Ethiopia. I am ambassador to Ethiopia, and I'm also the consulate warden for the British and Commonwealth returnees who settles in Ethiopia. Thank you.
Welcome, Ambassador.
Thank you.
Yes, please, the other panelists who are part of the panel, please introduce yourself. Are we then? Yes, Mr. Crew.
Yes, may I proceed? Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, please. Yes.
All right, give thanks. I'm from Windhoek, Namibia. Personally, my name is Veunja Shingaite. I'm representing from the Roots crew. We do a reggae show which broadcasts on NBC. It's actually ongoing as we speak. Besides that, I am a member of the Rastafari community and also a public servant at the same time as well. So, greetings and give thanks.
God bless. Welcome.
Right, give thanks, Mama.
I believe then that is all of us who are part of the panel. Our discussion touching on the status of education. Education, health, food production, leadership, technology. That's what we are focusing on today, and to find a way how we can get from where we are in line with the Garvey's vision of self-reliance, inclusive prosperity, and sustainable growth. Now, if I might start, Africa is a very youthful nation because it's estimated that 540 million, actually 540.8 million are youth under the age of 24. And 454.5 million are youth under the age of from 15 to 34. So, and when we look at that, we have a higher rate of illiteracy in Africa. We are the #1 illiterate continent with a global percentage of 30.7. We are definitely leading and not in a good way. And the reason for this is because it's unbelievable that most of our children between the age of 6 and 11 are said to be out of school. And 1/3 of the youth between the age of 12 and 14 are all out of school. And these are children that we are supposed to be educating. And now the reason why most of Africa is having this poor education, it starts with poor quality environment. The infrastructure in some area is non-existing. Children are being taught under the trees. There is overcrowding. You find a class probably having over 60 children, and it's not a big classroom, it's huge. It's a small with a number of children overcrowded. Now you can imagine in this age of corona. And then there is poor sanitation. It's non-existing at all. Children go to school and they have no sanitation, where to even wash their hands, let alone just where to relieve themselves. And then some of these are due to violence, because we both know that the AU is still struggling with silencing the guns. And that is, we have the poor content. It's an outdated curriculum, inadequate materials. So, and then we have the poor quality processes because our teachers are untrained, and it's poor school management that is also. That is added to the national legal framework that is totally, there is no compulsory of education requirement. Now, if we have 72 million children in Africa not attending school because they are busy at home working, or some families or some culture believe, no, a girl child should not be educated, or is due to religion, it's all these kind of things that we need to attend to. And then it's again due to poor health that children don't even have food to carry, maybe to go to school. So that is my opening on the education, that we need to look at how do we change our curriculum, to request our governments to invest more in education, because education is the best equalizer. And it's mostly embarrassing sometimes that Africa fought for the rights to education. And now sometimes the liberation movements have become a laughing stock, and some are prophesying that they are becoming to be extinct because we are failing to deliver on the promises, or even in the causes why we took up arms in the first place, to liberate ourselves. Education was the #1 priority, land. We wanted to be educated. We wanted to get away with this colonial education that denied us of the rights to education in the first place. So we need to look at how do we get away from here, instead of just talking and training our youth. They got out of school and they go look for employment. The unemployment rate in Africa is very high. And this is sometimes also due to our education system. The unemployment rate in Africa is very high. 1/3 of the youth in Africa are unemployed, underemployed, or they don't even have secure employment at all. Now, that is according to the African Development Bank. Although they have plans to bring up changes, we should all pull together and see how we get from where we are to where we would want to be. The next thing is I will be opening up is then on the health, or should we talk about the education and then we move to the health? Or should I just make an opening on the whole, then we take the discussion as we go on. Now, according to the World Youth Health Organization, fewer than 50% of Africans have access to modern health facilities. And many countries spend less than 10% of their GDP on healthcare. And without access to medicine, killer diseases such as malaria, TB, HIV/AIDS are the #1 killer of people in Africa, because it's estimated that 50% of children under the age of 5 who die of pneumonia, diarrhea, measles, HIV, TB, and malaria are in Africa. 50% of children under 5. And double with malnutrition because we do not have food. They contribute to nearly 80% of the total infectious diseases, as I have mentioned them before, which kill 6 million people in Africa per year. That is quite a number of people just dying because we do not have medical facilities or have medicine. And we all know now what we are right now in this pandemic. We are begging. We don't have a healthy system to take care of ourselves. We are literally begging, and sometimes people are complaining. We spend money and then we say we are waiting for people to donate. We are taken for a ride because we don't have a say. We give our money and then we sit and wait, and we don't receive the medicine we have ordered. And then by the grace of God, some Samaritan, because we have now become beggars and slaves, we wait for them to donate. So these are some of the things that as Africans, we need to develop our health system. It has to be done. We cannot refer people from Africa to India. If India could do it, we should learn from others. I believe that it's only by learning from the best that we can also be the best that we want to be. Now, food security, according to Dr. Adesina of the Africa Development Bank, we import $35 billion per year on food. Our food, we do not produce our own food. And it's estimated that this bill will rise to 110
Recording in progress.
$110 billion by 2025. Now, this is something that weakens our economies, it kills our agriculture, and it exports jobs from the continent. Although the African Development Bank have committed $24 billion to bring up solutions, especially into agricultural and other areas, we are way far from that, because we are talking about in 10 years. We are here now. And as we are here, is due to technology. Technology. As much as it being said that we have over 600 innovative hubs across the continent, and that technology is growing rapidly in Africa, we have more cell phones than we have access to clean water, electricity, or even a bank account. That's not very good. So Africa need to look at Rwanda. And I'm going to make use of Rwanda today as an example, because Rwanda is a country that pulled itself out of, hey, it hardens our hearts when we think about it, because it happened right now when some of us just got independence. But Rwanda is the only country that is producing cell phones Is the country that is using drones to drop medicine to its people? Is the country that has advanced their education to the level that they are killing the private education because almost every child in the public school has a computer? Technology, if we are talking about technology for our children to be able to use the technology that we are using here, the youth need to learn that. Our education system need to change to accommodate all areas of economies. We cannot think that everybody must become an academic. We must encourage sport. We must encourage arts from the young age, from the primary. Our curriculum need to be changed in order to accommodate all areas of economy. Now, we talk about the agriculture in terms of us. We both know that we Africans, we are people who work on the land to produce our food. Whether it's by plowing to plant, or whether it's by our livestock that give us meat and many milk, and you can mention. So this is a sector that can produce or create employment, and it can produce food for us. We should not be the one importing food. We should be exporting so that we can generate income for our continent. The African Development Bank is estimating that by 2025, they will create about 25 million jobs. And that by that also, they will create 50, they will be able to train 50 youth to be entrepreneurs. Now, I know that Dr. Adesina is very passionate about agricultural entrepreneurship. And this is one area that we should all support and encourage ourselves and call on our government. Our government is the AU. When we are talking as Africa here, we are calling on the AU to take drastic decisions to make sure that the agricultural sector is developed. So therefore, my colleagues, I open the floor for discussion, for input, because we are called upon to come up with resolutions that can be implemented to take us to another level. I thank you. Prof, am I the one to give the floor to others?
Really,
Oh yes, Ambassador, please.
Thank you, Evelyn. That was that said it all. You know, I'm Ambassador Jasmine. I'm in East Monroe. I talk about my arrival here in 2000. When I arrived in 2000, by 2001, the national examination for Ethiopia was all around Marcus. You know, all around Mark. The returning we had education because they will only become housewives. What's the point of spending money on the girls? But as they spent money on the boys looked for scholarship and went abroad and didn't come back. So you see some of the plight that Africa goes through. One of the problems that I find, and I don't think we should say Africa as a whole, because each of the parts on the continent deal with things, tribalism, all manner of different things that goes on. Sometimes there is no communication all the nation. So then the nation goes by propaganda. What is said, they hearsay. And because they hearsay, they go by the, oh, girls must not go to school, or boys must not go to school. So the propaganda machine has become a big part of our lives, whether we are on the continent or whether we're in England, America, and the Caribbean. We have to look at gaining what situation we're in and working with it. The diaspora who are outside of the continent are very important to the continent.
Indeed.
They do not have money, but they have knowledge. We were educated in the colonial schools. We know what the colonials are like. As much as the Africa will say, oh, they look like the white Jesus, so they must be good. We have a saying in Jamaica that don't let the left hand know what the right hand is doing. There's also other sayings that I've found that my parents and my grandparents taught me that I have to, it came back to me. And the reason why it came back to me while I'm living on the continent, because obviously our ancestors brought them down with our parents to teach us. Education is not only in the classroom. Education can be skills, traveling. If you're in your own little circle or your own town and don't go anywhere else, that is not educational. I remember in England, for instance, every Sunday we would go to the beach and different places. So we learn, we go to London, we go to travel and see how other people live. Right now, the colonials are still running the African continent. The visa restrictions, the movement of the diaspora who are outside, and even on the continent, because for Nigeria to come to Ethiopia to even do a little training program, doesn't happen. And for Ethiopia to Ghana to find out what's happening, it doesn't happen. So the dissemination of information of what's happening in our countries around the globe is very, very important. What is needed in each country is very, very important. We should let it be known what is needed in our country. We have 2 schools. We have built the Lakati School, which teach indigenous children as well as our children. We have built the Jamaican Community School. Now, the Jamaican Community School started off with 8 children. Now that has 997 children. We have grown. The curriculum is taught in English, but we also have a Romifa, English, Amharic as a subject. These students, high school, everything is taught in English, you know? So you can imagine the children that are leaving other schools to go to high schools that has to master the subject like science and geography and physics, and also master the English language. And then I have a teacher that is teaching them who has not even mastered the English language, but in English. Again, I say, Africa needs to call on the diaspora to come home, Africa has a tendency to, anytime we see the word scholarship, we apply and send our children out to scholarship. No. The children are in school 8 hours or university 8 hours a day. The other hours, they're amongst the indigenous of those countries where they pick up the habits. And the habits are the fascination. So they return to Africa, if they return, with a tendency to tear down governments, coups, you know. These things are happening every day. To it is the Bahama, and that is in others that we have not even. I hate using the word Africa. I keep using the word Ethiopians, because when we speak of the word Africa, you have got those that are Asians, that are whites, that also say they are Africans. So if you call a meeting for Africans, they're in there too. And they will tell you, I was born in Zimbabwe, or I was born, okay? So these are the reasons why I put label ourselves. The colonials have always labeled us. They have done our curriculums in the school. They have told our governments that, okay, you have freedom, you have independence, but it's only political independence. They have allowed our leaders to vote for each other, fight amongst each other, and they still control our resources that we're not watching. We need to control our resources. Whether you're in the Jamaica, the Ghana, the Gambia, the Trinidad and Tobago, those islands have resources that the African continent need. But right now, the African continent is taking resources from Italy and all the other colonials that uses us as a nation as their consumers, you know? And these are some of the policies. We need to put our governments in a position that they need to check, recheck these so-called independence policies that like Rwanda did. Rwanda went through their independence policies and decided, ooh, we need to change that. Agriculture, a lot of our people in the Caribbean and also in Africa has been told that agriculture and farming is a poor man's thing. It's not. Agriculture is tourism, clothes, food. The cotton plantation makes the cloth that people makes clothes with. The cattle makes the leather. So we need to educate our people that they don't decide that there's all these new things and they're going to leave their families' farms to go and work in other areas. And when they go off to other areas, there is no jobs and they become beggars on the streets. And that thing that I have found over the past months, it's happening elsewhere also. We have students as old as 25 years old who has graduated from universities and don't know what a CV is. There is a gap between the parents or the relatives and the children. If I say to a student, fill in this application form, they have no post office, like England and America that has a house number and the postman brings the letters to your door. We need to teach our students, and the parents need to let them know, this is your file number where you get your ID. This is the post office box. This is the address that is your mail comes to. Imagine now you say to a 25-year-old, bring me your CV. Graduated, architectural graduate, and don't know what a CV is, you know? One told me yesterday that, oh, you know, I have to get the job before I have to do a CV. So there's a lack of understanding. So we as adults, and again within the diaspora, needs to be educating each other. We need to be educating each other. We need to let our children know that education is more important than money. A lot of them will spend their time on the streets hustling the tourists because they think money is more important than education. Education brings forth money, and it also brings forth that economic development. I would say that one of the things that's needed now and desperately needed is in the diaspora and those on the African continent, no matter where we are on the continent, we need trading those in the diaspora. The diaspora are dependent on their land to bring their medicine, to bring their food, and those things that our diets. There is no plants where you can plant your own food. That means that your enemy is supplying your medicine. Your enemy is supplying your food. And yet we have the food freshly in abundance. The colonial colonials have taught those on the continent, those in the diaspora, and thought those in the diaspora that those on the continent don't like you, you know? And if you go on the continent, they are cannibal. These are the propaganda that goes out, oh, the war, the famine, and they have made the continent look tinish. Oh, tinish means small. They have made Nigeria small, Malawi small. So when they say that there is a problem in Nigeria with the Boko Haram or whatever his name is, it seems like it's all of Nigeria because people are only seeing Nigeria in the eyes of what the colonials will tell them. But the colonials have their hands deep in the pockets of the African continent, and they do not want the diaspora there because the diaspora has knowledge to help the continent. That is all we have, knowledge. They did not allow us to make money. So we have gained knowledge from their schools, their colleges, and their university. We study in the same schools as their prime ministers and their ministers. So the knowledge, the African continent needs to be pushing also for the reparation and the repatriation. Africa was stripped, so they need that reparation. The people, the educated, the kings and queens, and the knowledge that was on the continent was taken out. So it's going to have to take that hand in hand for those on the continent to call for the governments to make a change, bring the diaspora home. You shout on the continent for the repatriation of those of your brothers and sisters that were sold out. It cannot be a one-way street. Those in the outside also must shout louder for the repatriation, because I firmly do believe that the repatriation of the people back onto the continent means that the reparation that the continent's lost and the people's lost, united, we can deal with that because the colonials want our resources that we can sell to them. Right now, it seems like our back over the barrel, but once we're together and we're in one place, obviously some people will be in the diaspora, but you pull the repatriation and then work together and the reparation, and you see how quick they will gladly give, just so they can have the resources that they need. We have knowledge is development. It is our development, and we have to utilize each other on both sides. And don't watch propaganda of what is said about Nigeria, what is said about Ethiopia, what is said about Malawi. These are things that they have done to us from we were children in the diaspora to separate us, And we have to find ways now to unite. And I do think that, gosh, it's such a battle because we are so splintered. If you take Ethiopia, Ethiopia is splintered into tribe. If you take Nigeria, Nigeria is splintered into tribe. Zimbabwe is splintered into tribe. The islands are splintered into different islands, which are just tribes. So as we come together, they splinter us again. We have on both sides. Very important to pull them together to make our lives in the diaspora and on the continent a lot better. So it's a matter of working together to make sure that these things happen. I think I've said enough now, Evelyn.
Thank you, Ambassador. Bro, that was really enlightening. Because if it's one thing that we need to do, it's really to unite. United we stand, divided we fall. If we are united as one Africa, we can definitely call for reparation. You know, it's very interesting how we get killed and people look the other way. Hitler killed people and people are still being arrested, those who committed those crimes. I mean, is it why? Can somebody answer that question? Why are those people who were responsible for killing people in the those concentrating camps that they created? But here in Namibia, it's a struggle to get Germany admit. It has not been admitted, but just to say, yes, it is true. We are going to give this much for the killing of the Nama and the Hereros that we have done in Namibia. But those who died under Hitler, they are getting justice. Whether they have run away and they hide themselves, and as old as they might be, 90 years old, they have been hiding themselves for all those years. They are still being handed down and they are being arrested and persecuted. So what is so special about those? And them also, they receive money for the injustice done to them. So, Ambassador, the call to unite Africa in order to demand for reparation and the repatriation of our brothers and sisters from the diasporas is indeed one call that the UN, the AU need to address. The bringing of knowledge in order to develop Africa. That's one thing that we have all recognized, because we both know that Africa was deprived of education. Our curriculum is outdated. Our children are illiterate. And these are the people that we say they should become the leaders. And then we have that issue of the leadership. Our leaders need to root out corruption. Our processes must be of laws. We must govern with integrity and humility for the benefit of the people and not of self-interest. That's the most important thing, that we should really set our own interest aside if we commit to be leaders. Public leaders should be serving the people and not become masters. And again, it's another thing when you say, indeed, it's not all Africa that is the same. We should also accept and say, I am failing here, but you in Rwanda, you are doing great. Can we find a way for you to come and school us, train us on that? Our people are struggling and we want to get up and be running too. So we should realize that no one is perfect. I think it's one thing that I have learned, I must accept. It's a personal lesson that I have learned from Prophet TB Joshua, that no one is perfect. The processes that we follow will determine the results that we will have in the future. The processes is very, very much crucial. That if we try to take shortcuts just to get by for today, the repercussion will be severe. Therefore, we need to look at our leadership, that we should be governed by laws. Consistency should be, and we should not, as individuals, say, when I am saying, my elder Watson, what you did is not right. It should not become a personal matter to say you don't like me. No, it's simply correcting you, and I should do it in such a way that I should also not fall into temptation. Those are the lessons that I have learned from Prophet TB Joshua. And I believe, I want to say, if anybody wants to run an organization, should make it a time to visit Nigeria, especially the Synagogue Church of all nations, and learn from them how do they operate. I don't know why there is a double.
Evelyn, we need to, and there are other speakers.
Mute the mic.
Yeah, but there was that noise, Prof. I was just summing up. I'm sorry, I get passionate about the issues that affect our young people. And I would like to call on the other panelists, please, to present. Thank you.
May I go?
Yes, you may.
Okay, good afternoon again, everyone. I am Kamal Mahako. Wherever Garvey is, there is solemnity. And my noble ancestor, Marcus Garvey, I request permission to speak. It is an honor to be called upon to speak at this Marcus Garvey Symposium, particularly at today's Youth Forum. As an educator for over 2 decades, I have interacted with Black youth almost daily, and their nurturing and education is a matter of great seriousness to me. My institution, the Kemet Mosiah Academy, was founded on the tenets of Marcus Garvey. I recite now our pledge, which our students say every morning and every afternoon, a verse taken from a poem by the right excellent Marcus Garvey. All life must be a useful plan that calls for daily serious work, the work that wrings the best from man, the work that cowards often shirk. Dr. Dunkley addressed the teaching of Garveyism in schools. 2 years ago, I published a series of workbooks on the life and work of Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And these workbooks were designed to be used from the primary through to the tertiary level. The title of the series is the Garveyite Workbooks 1 to 3, Beginner, Intermediate, and Advanced, a comprehensive study of the life and work of Marcus Garvey. I would love to see these workbooks being incorporated in schools throughout the length and breadth of Africa and its diaspora, as well as among adults, because Garvey's work needs to be known by all. Marcus Garvey was keen on the education of Black youth. He particularly stressed that our children be taught mathematics, science, and history, areas which they traditionally shy away from or are told that they do not have the brain power to tackle. My school, the Kemet Mosiah Academy, hosts a free YouTube channel of the same name that offers over 250 tutorials in mathematics from grade 4 all the way to grade 11 mathematics. In teaching mathematics to Black children, my aim is to break down the concepts so that they grasp the fundamentals and can make everyday applications. No longer should any Black child feel that mathematics is above the ken of him or her. I propose that when we teach the course of Garveyism in our schools, we do so in such a way as to incorporate the songs, poems, documentaries, etc., that have been produced in honor of the great man, as well as Garvey's own speeches and recordings in his own powerful voice. It is one thing to read Garvey's words. It is quite another thing to hear the man speak. A word of caution, though, when we expose our students to the documentaries and songs, we must teach them how to process these, because how to process them with an open and analytical mind, because I have discovered some documentaries about Marcus Garvey that appear to be very biased. But this exposure and the discussion generated will help our students to develop critical thinking skills. The state of our race is such that indiscipline and lack of integrity are at an all-time high. In Jamaica here, we have first-hand experience of this. From my observation, I would say that the 15 to 35-year-old generation is particularly affected. There is rampant and callous disregard for the rights of others. We see it in the actions of John Public, but also in the taxi and bus operators, the corrupt corporate management, even our constabulary and military, who seem to have turned against the people whom they were sworn to protect and serve, like an autoimmune contagion. The abuse and murder of women, the rape and kidnapping of young girls, all indicative of a degenerative society that lacks a moral compass. When I think of Marcus Garvey, I think of integrity. We speak of having a strong spinal cord. For me, integrity, discipline, excellence, and ambition are the fibers of a strong spinal cord. With Garveyism as the backbone, providing the framework, we may stand firm and powerful and step forward in dignity. So we say we want to teach Garveyism in schools. Have we thought this through all the way? Is there a point at which we will draw the line? Do we understand that for some, teaching Garveyism in schools is tantamount to a declaration of war? Are we prepared to forge forward unflinching? Let me remind you, Marcus Garvey never lowered his voice when he spoke. Will we present that voice to our students, uncensored, unabridged, unapologetic? Marcus Garvey did not take shortcuts. Understand that teaching Garveyism in schools is not a game, it is not a joke. A strong and resolute spine is required of those in positions of leadership, prime ministers, ministers, ambassadors, principals, teachers, as well as the students. When we are accused of rabble-rousing, as Garvey himself was, what will be our reply? How receptive is this generation to the teachings of Marcus Garvey? Let us not forget that these are the very descendants of those who allowed the most massive organization of Blacks in the history of mankind to stagger like a disoriented mammoth. This generation has far more distractions too. They have far worse diets than our ancestors living in Garvey's time. And as we know, diet affects brain power. Also, there is far less connectivity to our Africanness than that experienced at the turn of the last century. This generation of Black students come with a unique set of challenges that we cannot ignore. Nonetheless, we can turn these to our advantage. This generation of students has at their fingertips more power than the kings, presidents, nobles, scientists, military statesmen, men of the past ever dreamed of. The average 8-year-old has access to the gadgets of technology, tablets, smartphones, laptops, access to the internet, social media. Never in the history of mankind have children been so empowered. Can you imagine Marcus Garvey living at the time of cellular phones, laptops, and the internet? I get goosebumps just thinking about it. So as we incorporate Garveyism in schools, we can ride the bull of technology and harness the positives understanding that we live in the technological age and that our students are most receptive to this format. We can make our lessons more interactive, incorporating art, music, poetry, drama. Garvey himself was a Renaissance man, a big patron of the arts. We can organize real and virtual school trips, school outings to Africa, just as we organize school outings to Disney World. African images, music, etc. need to be more prevalent in our classrooms. We can't teach Garveyism in a bubble. We have to address issues such as the reverence that our people have for gods that do not look like them, the malnourishment among our children, the skin bleaching and lack of esteem, the lyrics of the songs that our students are exposed to, low esteem towards women and no respect for authority, lack of motivation, and living in a system that promotes and rewards sports and entertainment, but does not reward academia. In addition to teaching Garveyism, we have to set a context for our students by also exposing them to great thinkers such as Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, Dr. Amos Wilson, and other scholars. In closing, I would say that we are first and foremost Africans before we are Jamaicans, Trinidadians, African Americans. So let us not make the mistake, though, of telling our students that they have to abandon their Caribbeanness, whatever other diasporan culture they are born into. We can embrace both, respecting the individual experiences that have forged us. We should not pretend that the diasporan culture does not matter. These are the issues that I think we should address moving forward when we think of teaching Garveyism in schools. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Excellent presentation, my dear.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, excellent. I have a question, and if it's okay, if I can just ask a question. Thank you so much. So thanks again for your presentation. Very informative. I'm curious because it remains a struggle is how can we scale what you have done, certainly at your school, across the education system in Jamaica and the Caribbean? Like, what would it take and what would that look like?
Well, certainly these workbooks, and as I said, they are geared for all students, including adult students. They are available to be used in schools, and they are structured in such a way that, they're interactive, using art, using tables, comprehension passages. So for now, it would just be a matter of accessing the workbooks and deciding to use them in the schools. Is as simple as that.
Where could we acquire some of these books, Madam?
At present, the books are available on Amazon.
Okay.
And for those in Jamaica, we will be getting some shipments in, but immediately you can go on Amazon.com. So this is, I have two of the books here. So this.
And the name of it is the Garveyite book.
The Garveyite workbook. This is the beginner workbook.
Okay.
A comprehensive study of the life and work of Marcus Garvey.
All right. Thank you. Garveyite.
The Garveyite workbook, 1, 2, and 3.
Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome, sir.
I am in Antigua, Barbuda, and I'm the ambassador to the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. I've also been installed in Ghana in the Mpese Royal Chieftaincy, but I have been educated all my life. I have taught in schools in Jamaica, And I am quite surprised, perhaps elated to hear of this particular workbook, and I'll be making my best efforts to acquire this for schools here in Antigua particularly. Thank you very much, madam.
You're welcome, sir.
Ras Frankai.
Blessed.
Ras Frankai, blessed.
Yes, they're right.
We met a couple of years ago through Jelani, remember?
I don't actually do so, but I have met so many people through Jelani.
Yeah, well, we were doing the video on the beekeeping that night.
Okay, all right.
Yes, I'll endeavor to make you get the books.
Well, I presently have an ongoing order from Amazon, and I will add it on to them. My daughter is expediting it, and she was in touch with me today, so I will just have to add on those to the list. And I think I'll be doing that by later on this afternoon.
Okay. If you have a problem though, just link me. I'll link Jelani.
Okay, I'm in constant contact with Jelani.
Yeah, I know that.
Yes.
Bless up.
Sir, sorry, Sister Evelyn, has all the people on the panels have spoken already? Because it seems they're having a cross conversation. I'm just wondering if everyone has spoken.
My abject apologies for cutting in, please. I just thought it was important that I got contact with those books.
Ras Franca, you know you already. Love you, Ras Franca.
Neutral.
Sister Marsha, you turn over thing to the Rastaman they made last week.
Are you going, some man? Sorry, isn't Roots School, has he spoken?
Just check here as well.
Roots School.
Listening to the speakers, I think. Can I just one of the things that I'm picking up here is that intercultural exchange is really needed. That youth from the African continent go and visit those in the diaspora and vice versa. I have here in Ethiopia, as you know, the returnees has been coming from the over 70 years. So there is a lot of children here in Ethiopia that their fathers has passed away over the years, and their dream is to go to Jamaica. And when we're telling them, no, you don't want to go to Jamaica, we left Jamaica to come here, they're angry. They don't see why we came here and they can't go and see Jamaica. So I'm not too sure what is happening in Jamaica and the other Caribbean islands and England, but the children on the continent, they mimic the Caribbean. They want to speak like, and as most of you know around the continent, the language is the patois, whether it be a French patois or a Portuguese or whatever. Our children here in Shashmani speaks patois, even though they learn English at school, but the English on the street, you would have think that they were like your great-grandparents. They speak the raw patois. And they are crying out. One of the youths is actually got a tourism thing, business that he set, and he's got the tourist board and everyone to stamp it and sign it, because he wants to take the children that are born to Jamaican parents and Barbados, Trinidad, and so on, but they call us all Jamaicans. He wants to take them to Jamaica to see what Jamaica is like. Now, we need someone in Jamaica or in the other places to organize something on that side that they can actually do a youth exchange. Some go there, some come here, that they can understand, and that is education. They need to understand each other rather than the propaganda in the media or on their mobile feed. The reality of where we are coming from when we come to the continent and why we have the knowledge and the survival kit that we have. They don't seem to have that, but they follow what we do in order to survive. But it would be good to organize youth exchange or international youth exchange, that we have youths going to visit our descendants in the England, America, Jamaica, St. Vincent, and all the other islands, and vice versa. Those are coming and those are going. We really need that, because they are the man and woman of tomorrow. We're not going to be here forever, but these youths need to have a different teaching to what we ourselves or what we have been taught about each other in the diaspora, as well as on these last few days, that there's a culture exchange with the youths from the continent. More than one, obviously, from the Ethiopia, the Nigeria, that a group is set up that will organize these things to educate our young people of what it is out there and what it is here as well, so that they don't always want to go out there and thinking that, Hollywood and the streets are paved with gold and money and pounds and dollars is the thing. They need to see how we live. In fact, they actually think in Ethiopia that Jamaica is rich. And Jamaica, we're free, nobody can fight us, nobody can abuse us, because we are Jamaicans and we stand up. But we are the handful here. They don't know what it's like on the ground. And they need to understand that what's on the ground there is a similar situation that they're in here or on the continent. And I must say that, governments are only there to govern the country. The population is there to build businesses and make business and build the economic structure and make employments. Thank you.
Can we hear from Roots Crew? Because we have to wind down this part now. So can we give Roots Crew an opportunity to contribute? Can we give Roots Crew an opportunity to contribute before we wind down this part of it?
Just give me a second, Prof. I'm trying to. Can you see me, Prof?
Yes.
Professor? Can you see me?
No, we can see your camcorder.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the feed to come in. But can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Okay. All right. Then let me just proceed. So, good evening to everyone. On our side, it's evening time here. Good morning or good day, wherever you might be. Of course, it is an honor to be here, to be part of this conversation and to be part of this platform. I myself, I am Beon Jashingaite. I'm from Windhoek, speaking from Namibia. As mentioned earlier, I'm a member of the Rastafari community. And as well, I am a broadcaster on a specific show which plays on NBC radio station, which is our national broadcasting corporation, these sites in Namibia. Once again, give thanks for the opportunity to be able to give my contribution to the discussion. Initially, my main intention had been to give an insight into the specific history of UNIA in Namibia and how it eventually influenced our whole setup for our second struggle towards independence post genocide, and how it had a great influence in in us being able to take our cause to the United Nations, to the United World, or to the international global stage, whereby earlier it had rather just been a national or a colonial kind of struggle. So, but to stick to the topic of today's theme, so reasoning to ourselves, basically, how does Marcus Garvey, or how can Garveyism influence these various aspects in order for us to be able to address some of these issues throughout Africa? And of course, I'm speaking from the perspective of Namibia. First off, what we need to understand is that Marcus Garvey and Pan-Africanism is not just a theory kind of thing. It is an actual practical solution that can be implemented and can be used to address a lot of issues. We often tend to take it only in the sense of theory, and then we tend to paint it with a radical sort of paint, and sometimes it can keep people away from that sort of energy. Often when I used to speak about Marcus Garvey and revolutionary kind of people in the past, some people would label us as radicals and such forth, but I think it's because we don't have a full understanding of what Pan-Africanism really is from the practical sense of it. So if we take Pan-Africanism, and generally to sum it up, to conclude it, Pan-Africanism is a for us and by us kind of thing. It addresses our issues uniquely from a perspective of an African. So therefore, from that sense, when we try to address education, for example, there is a need for us to think about restructuring our education or re-educating ourselves. When we think about the curriculums which are in the school setups, I think that we need to incorporate new curriculums which are more in alignment with what is the current situations on the ground as far as we Africans are concerned. So we need to thus involve more of our own history into our curriculums so that it can be able to give our students a better moral ground, of which by they can be more motivated to actually want to study. I remember often that in classes when we would learn theories from individuals of whom names we could not pronounce or whose ideologies we could not really. For example, in law, you deal with all these Greek names, and in science, you deal with all these Roman and Greek names. You know, it can be difficult for a African child to relate to that information because, first off, it's not being related to them in their own language, and also they might not be able to see the direct connection as far as their culture is concerned. And because now we live in a time where we have information technology all around, we should be able to incorporate our own history much more into the whole setup of the education system. So we know that Africans have had great achievements. So many achievements have been achieved. I mean, so many inventions have been created by African people all over the world. It would be very, very motivational for students to know that, for example, the computer system is a system that was created in Africa. The binary code of 0 and 1, as we know in computer science, it is the basis upon where we calculate all arithmetic as far as information technology is concerned. Yet the 0 and 1 binary system is a system which was practiced in Africa in Kemet. Furthermore, you can think about the fact that in the Dogon culture, people were able to observe the Sirius B star. So how were they able to observe that Sirius B star? And the European scientists only came to come and discover this star, at least in the 1900s, whereby the Dogon people had been mentioning this from a long, long time. So if African young students were able to know that, it would be much more motivational to them to actually want to learn more about science, learn more about astronomy, learn more about astrology and such forth. One thing that we need to consider from a Pan-Africanist perspective as far as education is concerned is the language barrier. Now, of course, we know that most of the curriculums are addressed in European languages, and that's just something which is a reality in the continent throughout. But what we need to understand is that if we could have more of our education addressed in our indigenous languages, like I said before, it would be much more easier for a African student to relate to those kind of things. And furthermore, perhaps it's not just that we need to concentrate on verbal expression of language, can I put it that way? One thing that we need to understand about we as Africans is that most of our history has actually been kept by the elders in the communities who would relate these stories through storytelling. And storytelling has a specific purpose in keeping our history and keeping certain information, and it's just wrapped around in a way that makes it attractive, so that when a child hears it, it sticks to their head, you know. So perhaps, I don't know, and I'm just giving a suggestion, perhaps maybe we should try to restructure education that we can, perhaps the African child is better in let's say if we had tests whereby you could answer them through audio, if you could actually write an exam through audio, because perhaps African students are better at listening rather than we are at writing, because in most of the senses, we're writing in European languages. And when I look into ancient African cultures, yes, we do have scripts and we have the hieroglyphics and such forth, but even the way that our hieroglyphics and such were written, they were written in a very artistic way. So we had different ways of communicating information and such forth. For example, the use of drums and such forth. So I know I might be going a little off topic, but I just want to express that. And of course, knowing that we as African people also have certain skills when it comes to just using our hands. I can give you examples of, I know plenty of people who have no formal education, but learned literally from just watching elders fix cars and or be engineers and such forth. And from that, they would be able to actually educate themselves and become skilled in that sense. So perhaps we need to focus more on some vocational schools and such forth. So just to go because I want to stay within the theme as well. As far as food security is concerned, one thing that we have to understand is that when I look at the situation in South Africa, I see that a lot of the people who were in the riots and such forth were poor people, of course. But I thought to myself, if people had access to land and they had some agriculture going on, perhaps there wouldn't have been so many people clamped up in the cities that everyone is running towards the kind of food and goods which you would only find in the cities and such forth. And in any sense, most of them kind of products are not good for our people. So when we come back to food security, we have to think about agriculture. And of course, land plays a big role in that. We need to be able to start subsidizing small farmers, because there's this myth that you know, supposedly if you give land to people who are unskilled, then the land will not be utilized the best way. But we need to take into consideration that even the European settlers, when they came in as migrants from Europe, they didn't necessarily come in with skills. So what was the difference? The difference was that because the colonial governments saw the importance of having to subsidize their farmers, because it was so important for them to get control of the land. So therefore they had to make land productive. So they were subsidized heavily by the governments at that time and provided with training so that they could up their skills. So what I'm trying to relate is that even the European farmers, the so-called Boer farmers, for example, were not necessarily educated as far as farming is concerned when they came as migrants from Europe. So why can we not do the same then for our own farmers? Why can we not subsidize small farmers and give them the training so that they can? And it's not like it's farming or agriculture is something which is foreign to us. We've been farming and we've been participating in agriculture for the longest of times. You can go back to Kemet, you can go back to ancient Great Zimbabwe, you can go back to to the ancient Mali, the kingdoms of Ghana and such forth. So we need to start thinking about that as far as Pan-Africanism is concerned. And this is how I feel that Garveyism can apply to a lot of these elements. And you know, food security is thus connected once again to health. If we don't have food security, then we cannot address the issue of health, because most of the foods which we get in the supermarkets and such forth are GMO foods. South Africa, if I'm not mistaken, is amongst the top 5 or at least the top 10 biggest GMO producers of foods in the world. Now we in Namibia, when we think about food, a lot of our food is imported from South Africa. So that kind of food might not be the best for the health of our people. If we are in a situation or in a place whereby we can be eating foods that we produce ourselves locally, because in any sense, because we Africans were always taken away from the market, or it was made difficult for us to compete with the rest of the world because of all these stipulations and all these things which you'd have to pass for you to get your product validated by those markets and such forth. For example, for example, in the meat industry, your beef supply would have to wait a certain amount, and you know that most of the other farmers are using injections for their cattle, for example, and so that's now, if people who don't have access to things such as pesticides, injections, and all of these kind of things, then it means that the likelihood is that the food that they're producing is much more healthier and is a much more better option for the people than it is in comparison to the other foods which we get in the supermarket. So from that perspective, thus, it's important that we take grip of our agriculture and food security and try to eat food that we produce in that sense. Furthermore, as far as health is concerned, I don't want to go too off topic, we need to start thinking about an endorsement of traditional doctors, because it is an African thing for us to have always been given information from the elders relating to what kind of plants and what kind of bushes and roots are good for various health ailments and such forth. The traditional doctors have always played that role for many, many thousands of years. We always speak about the generations of the past having had, or it seems that they had much more better health than the generations of today. So what was it that allowed them to be at those kind of levels of good health in comparison to us today? It definitely has to have been that the traditional doctors played a big role in that. In today's time, most of the traditional doctors are stigmatized and labeled as witch doctors and such, and therefore they don't gain the opportunity to be able to gain fair money or fair opportunities for them while practicing the traditional medicine setup. Of course, you will find some doctors who will be using it commercially and might not have the full knowledge, but you do have those who do have the full knowledge of traditional medicine and can prove it. Why not take some of these people who are truly interested in that and endorse them and even give them skills in training? I've seen documentaries where Europeans came into Namibia, for example, and they took the Hoodia plant. Hoodia is a plant which has been said is good for women's fertilities and such forth. when they took the Hoodia plant and they went to go and produce it into a pill form, when the Khoisan man went into the pharmacy and found the pill, he asked himself, why is it that he was never involved in the process of actually creating that? These are questions which we need to address from the angle of Pan-Africanism. We need to endorse what is ours, by us, and for us. And so therefore, we need to create those internal markets which are suitable for us. We see, of course, what is going on with the epidemic. Notice that Mozambique was amongst some of the first countries which actually proposed possible discovery of medication which could, at least help to alleviate some of the symptoms of corona. Of course, at that time, the vaccines had not been developed around the world, but they had spoken of the opportunity and had invited scientists from around the world to come and verify whether what they had shown was actually true or not. Today, we have a huge problem in Africa in the sense that all the vaccinations which we are talking about are coming from foreign sources and such forth. We should be able to produce our own vaccinations and take examples such as Cuba, which, if I'm not mistaken, by now has produced about 4 or 5 different vaccinations. If we take these things from a Pan-African perspective and think about it from that angle, then we can solve a lot of these issues, such as the vaccination, for example. Basically, in conclusion, what I'm trying to point towards is that Pan-Africanism is an actual practical solution that can be implemented to solve a lot of our issues across the continent. It's not that we should just think about it from the sense of strictly just a theory, or that we forget that it has actually, even in the past, helped Namibia, for example, in a practical sense, to eventually start our struggle for our independence eventually, which came forth through a United Nations resolution. If I'm not mistaken, I think Namibia was the first country in the world to actually gain its independence through a United Nations resolution. So thinking about that, going back once again, if as far as leadership is now concerned, if I could just address leadership, and then I'm going to just give the floor to others. As far as leadership is concerned, what we need to begin to understand is that we have used systems which are foreign to us, such as socialism, communism, capitalism, free economy, and such forth. I think it's important that we need to, like I said, view Pan-Africanism as an actual system, an actual practical solution to some of our issues. And so thus we need to re-strategize and create a new system which we can incorporate in the setups of our governments across Africa. Seeing that Pan-Africanism was the basis upon where Namibia, because post genocide, the question had been as to how were we going to strategize our independence struggle. Were we going to go through another military war, or were we going to use other platforms such as the United Nations and the League of Nations to gain our independence? What UNIA did was that it helped our it helped our various assets throughout that was quite throughout and instrumental in that, and seeing that the Marcus Garvey had proposed to the League of Nations in 1922 that that we be given to UNIA as a protectorate, it shows you that. And he had mentioned that after 20 years, they would be able to show that Black leadership can actually function as a real system of rule. That should have been a great opportunity for us to have learned that these things can be incorporated as a actual system in our setups of rules. So I think we need to restudy these things, reevaluate these things, and reincorporate these things. So yeah, I know we have other panelists in the group as well. So I don't want to take too much time of everybody. So that's my contribution as far as I'm concerned. Being a Namibian youth here, if that's all right with you, Professor Taylor.
Evelyn, we are running out of time, but I want to just appreciate the contribution made by Beunja. I think he has addressed a number of issues. Can we round up with some resolutions now? And I see a few that have emerged. One of them is the challenge to our intellectuals to define Pan-Africanism as a philosophy which can run parallel to the other isms, and suggest that our African and diaspora get together to refine the tools of Pan-Africanism so that Africa is clear which way to go, whether it's communism, capitalism, or Pan-Africanism. Where does it fit within that trajectory? The second one I see is food security and the link with health, and the recognition of traditional medicine and the support, scientific support for traditional medicine, and the support of Africa and Africa diaspora for things developed within Africa or the diaspora. For example, the Madagascar solution to the virus, the Cuba solution to the virus. The African and this diaspora have not come out in any way in support of that. So they are fighting a battle by themselves. So this is something that we need to find out. How do we support ourselves against the rest of the world, against the GMOs? One country cannot do it. But if we are bound together with a common philosophy and it is understood by all, then I think we have a way forward. So I would like us to generate some consensus as to some resolutions that we can take out of this forum.
Yes,
and then after that, yes.
Do I have the floor?
Yes.
Yes, you are right indeed, Prof. Those are the main resolution that I'm also looking at that we have gathered from this discussion. It's the change of our curriculum to suit our needs is very, very crucial. To incorporate all type of our education system must change from the primary school to include vocational training, to realize that not all of us are academically talented. We must include sport development, arts, dramas from that young age. Children should be encouraged to follow their talent in order to become self-reliant. And one example one can make use of is that I can make a practical example of Namibia. we are now having 2 young people who are putting Namibia on the map. But it's not the system that have developed them to become the national heroes. It's individual sacrifices. So these are the things that we need to understand, that why the European League is such a major thing is because they develop sport. It's recognized as a business. So therefore, we should also encourage our education to include this important part of as part of the curriculum. That is on the curriculum. Agriculture, yes, the AU through the African development have a good goal to encourage agriculture, but we should again emphasize it and call upon it to become indeed one of the main issues, that we should, as Africa, become self-reliant by producing our own food. Producing our own food and encouraging the intercontinental trade. Yes, indeed, it's good now that through the Africa free trade area that has been possible. But we should encourage the production of our own food, and we should not export our raw materials when it comes to, even if we within continentals. I mean, there is no way that Namibia can export their raw livestock, I mean, their livestock as it is fully to South Africa, because they are also losing on creating jobs down here at home. So the intercontinental trade is encouraged, but we should also look at ways how we can both benefit instead of depriving the other. The issue of food security, the healthy system, it's an embarrassment for us as Africans that we are, and I should touch on that, that as much as we are saying we should kick Corona out of Africa or wherever, we should not, our government should not become, make draconian laws that force people to be vaccinated with medicine that they do not want or that they do not know. My brother has spoken about Cuba. He has spoken about Madagascar. How do we as Africa support our brothers in the diaspora? Cuba has played a major role in the liberation of Namibia. And that is what brought about the independence of Namibia and South Africa. So how do we come to develop our health system if we do not work together as one? Because Cuba is a Caribbean and is one of Africa. That's why they sacrifice. So why should we force our people to take medicine from countries that they not trust? It has been said, people have the fear that they are taking the poison because these are the people who do not want you. So those, how do we kill these so-called conspiracy theories? The only way is to ease our people by getting them the medicine manufactured by the people they love, and that the people who love them also, if I may say so. Cuba is a friend of Africa, and getting the medicines from Cuba, we are also just supporting another, because we know Cuba is under the US embargo. That has not been lifted. So what is preventing us from supporting Cuba? Through the AU, that the AU is now buying the vaccination, let the AU be encouraged to buy and to source vaccine for Corona from Cuba. Thus is a way, one way of establishing our and strengthen our health system. And the way of traditional medicine, it's not much of such as traditional medicine, is to rather stop the exporting of traditional raw medicine from Africa to Europe and then be brought back to us. So we should encourage and I repeat, in the word of President Ado Akufo, that we should not export our raw materials. So that is one way again of strengthening, and this will create jobs for the youth, because this discussion focuses on the way forward for the youth. Education, indeed, the sister with a beautiful school has mentioned it all, that we should encourage, we should teach our story. Our story is what we should teach. We should encourage our academics to write stories for Africa, of Africa for Africans. Let the children of Africa learn about Africa and not become ignorant. It has been said earlier that the relics they listen to, they want to go outside and then they get doctrine with a different ideologies, and then when they come here, they think they are higher than where they come from. So we should encourage an education system that fits our needs, and that is by our academics to write a curriculum that fits and that is for us as Africans. That is the way to change our school curriculum. And we should encourage the development of enough infrastructure. Let's train our teachers. Let's build more schools than prisons. It was happening, it was mentioned yesterday that Cameron proposed rather to give 25 euro millions or whatever you call them to build a prison in Jamaica. You know, these kind of things we should do away with. We should focus on building more schools rather than prisons, because our future, it happens that the African Americans are the minority in America, but they are the majority filling up prisons. So we need to change this setup. In Africa, we should focus on reforming. Yes, we call it correctional services, but it must become a reality that our focus should be on education, where we empower our young people with skills that will make them become self-employed, self-reliant. It was spoken about that skills, that apprenticeship is what we should encourage. So those are the resolutions that we are taking on here to really ensure that we are moving forward to where we desire. The Agenda 2063 is very clear. That's the Africa we desire. And we should re-emphasize it over and over so that we all understand where do we want to be. Reduce the illiteracy rate. Our children must be in school, not in the streets, so they do not fall victim and prey to all the violence being made used as thugs by politicians.
Okay, can we get some other resolutions from the other?
I was summing up what was discussed, Prof. Those
okay.
was not all my points.
Can we get some views from the audience, from the general audience, some new material? I don't want to hear increased education. That has been the jargon. I want to get something specific that will make a difference, not general statements. If there's anybody in the audience who
Greetings. Can I say something, Prof? Towards that aspect you described in there. Do I get to go ahead?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. What I'm saying is, every time we come together to discuss the way forward of our people and the condition that is confronting us as a nation, we fail to address it in the right steps at a time. You see, we want to do so many things under the same old colonial ways. We're inviting these new ideas in the same, under the same colonial system. Why can't we understand that we must first be a people, a sovereign people in ourselves, and structure our own government? If we don't attend to these things, instead of taking an easy route by accepting, courses and handouts from government to be some PhD of a special subject, we need to get out of that framework. Now, in Jamaica, to see the leading factors in Jamaica, what are we really saying to our people is the way forward? We ignore the sovereignty of the Maroon states, which is what is recognized by the AU, and we still creating all these different 6 region, this 6 region, that. But who is the official state that is recognized by the AU? And if that is the first step in our way forward as a sovereign people, then why can't we all focus on that portion? And that portion goes along with the Lumi. Everyone on this forum right now should be busy talking about how we gonna trade among ourselves, how one should register up to get this Lumi, because we're confronted now with what is called the 4th industrial revolution, and it's gone digital. So why is it can't we, for once, take the opportunity to be ahead of this revolutionary movement? We're gonna have to always wait to be led by other people, the Europeans. We're Africans now, it's our time we not only have to save ourselves, we have to save the world. So if we continue like this, talking about this and talking about that and trying to fit into a colonial system without our sovereign rights, and as I said from beginning, this is how we started out with our great leaders. They started out on the wrong foot. They're not starting, because imagine the Maroon sovereign state has been since 1739. Jamaica come about 62 with what kind of a scheme? And we as elders, revolution, Black people who are responsible for the future of our nation, we sit here and we consider ourselves Jamaican under the Queen Constitution, where the Queen is now trying to buy out the sovereignty of the Maroon, and she don't get her way. So now she's pushing all these reparation handouts to Jamaica to fight against your own self. So, Professor, we need to approach our liberation as a sovereign people. And the only sovereign people that we know right now as Black people is the Maroons in Jamaica and the Ethiopians up to a point of 1974. You see? So we have to, and Ethiopia did come to Jamaica with the OAU and invite us as Jamaicans to be a part of the OAU, because this is the only way that we can get our collective objectives addressed on an international forum. So we need to take it from the scratch. Give thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to intervene again. I think Ambassador Jasmine mentioned something about building skills. And we should learn from countries like Germany that invested in vocational training and education. Not that we do not recognize university, but Africa is competing for university students. And we are training people for other countries. When the skills are needed, we are lacking. And so the education that we are giving, everybody wants to go to a university, not to a college where they get skills that are useful and usable. And so when they are trained, they go, their market is not the country that trains them. They're on the international market. And so we put a lot of investments in, but the returns are not coming back. It's going to somebody else. Now, you need that, but you need to bring a balance between the skills that you need to grow your country, the industry need, and the people need to start their own businesses. Not PhDs that you can teach. You need a few, but not everybody is going to be PhDs or lecturers, in the sense that they are now competing to go to America or to London. So that's something, that's education that fits the need. And the recommendation we want to make, which Ambassador mentioned, is to put education based on the needs of the country. Put that as priority number one. Priority number two is to build the research capacity to support indigenization, agricultural development, health care, and so on. So that is a results-driven education, not education where you cannot do anything when you finish, but beside lecturing and professoring. Okay. Dr. Dunkley, would you want to say something recommendation-wise, solution-wise?
Hello? Hello?
Yes, go ahead. Is that Dr. Dunkley? Oh, Pauline?
Pauline, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, and I think everybody does.
Okay. I'm Pauline Clay. I have been a consultant for the African Union for over 50 years when it was the OAU. And I just wanted to announce that they are having their 6th region diaspora conference in Monrovia, Liberia. And that will be on November 8th through the 10th. And then afterward, they're going to have a tour and a ball or gala afterwards. Now, the reason I'm this is all very important to me is because I am considered the mother of reparation here in the United States. I'm in California now. In 1989, I drafted the original reparations petition and gathered over 100,000 signatures and submitted it to the late John Conyers, who introduced it in the U.S. Congress as H.R. 40. And then following those years, there was a lack of sponsorship, but now you know that it is full. It's center, full fronter and center with the Congress, and it's now being in the process of being considered for, in the state here in California, it was passed into law. And we have asked for now African American Airlines as a way so that our people can go back to return to Africa. Now, getting back to Liberia, you know that Liberia was the place where African Americans, the freeborn people of color, went to. And can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
I don't have a camera, so this is a new computer, so it doesn't have a camera on it.
We can hear you. Just proceed.
If I may continue,
yes, proceed.
There's a number of issues that have happened. As of December 21st of this year, we will be celebrating or commemorating the arrival of the freeborn people of color who arrived at Providence Island right off the coast of Liberia. Now, this may be there's a lot of history that one doesn't know, that is not known. But what has gotten me very involved with this is the fact that Providence Island, we lost 15 of the 38 people who left the United States in 1821 and arrived in Providence Island. What has recently happened is that the United Nations and the United States States Department and the country of Liberia, which does, it is literally African, the country of Liberia belongs to the African Americans, not, and what they did is they gave this island to the United Nations under UNESCO. This was what they call the World Monument Fund. You can find them at WMF.org. And if you go to Liberia, you will see that they are discussing that this island, which actually it belongs to the African Americans. Now, what we have proposed is to make that island, they want to make it a park, but because it belongs to the African Americans, because in the preamble to the Constitution, when the Declaration of Independence, when our people declared their independence from the United States and declared themselves to be the Republic of Liberia, the preamble reads this way: this land which we have acquired through honorable purchase, we bequeath it to our brothers and sisters still in bondage in America. In the event they become free, this Republic of Liberia is their sovereign nation. So it was a trust, it was a will, it was everything. And we held on to, as a matter of fact, I have almost 10,000 relatives there, even though I'm here in the United States because they left in 1821 and continue to go there. But this is the issue. We would like, I have put the United Nations, our organization have put the United Nations, we put President Biden, we put the State Department, we have put the Congressional Black Caucus, all organizations, all entities, that they cannot take this island and that they cannot take this island because it belongs to us. And we would like to make it the center for the Pan-African Center government. As you know, even though the island is only 12 acres, our organization is not in it, and what I'm trying to say, even though the organization is only 12 acres, the fact is Vatican City is a country in itself too. And we can, and you can take 12 acres and with other lands that we own on the mainland of Liberia, we can create this as a sovereign nation in itself. Now, there is two other parts in the Constitution that was never revised, even though Liberia went through a civil war. And that was the fact that it says only a person of African descent can be a citizen of Liberia. And then it says any person that steps on the soil of Liberia is to be treated as any other Liberian citizen. What we are doing is we're seeking authority to issue our passports to all people throughout the Pan-African world, and use this particular area as a gateway to entry, where you would be able to go to any other part of Africa. You could actually go to any other part of the world, but particularly Africa. Now, as you know, under the African Union, you have what is called the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which means that once we are authority on Providence Island, call it the Republic of Providence Island, the second thing is that you are now a member of ECOWAS, one of the 5 regions within the continent. And then you're part of being a part of ECOWAS, you're part of the African Union. And as a part of the African Union, you're part of the African continent, the 55 countries, we would be the 56th nation on the continent. It's not, and then you are part of the African Union. What we are doing is eventually our delegation is going to this session on the 8th of November to dissolve and say, we are giving all people throughout the African world an opportunity using this landmark as a gateway to go to any part of Africa. We would be considered a part of ECOWAS. Now, the other issue, I'm trying to go quickly because I realize it's going to be over. You know, this is where Marcus Garvey was trying, his mission was trying to get to Liberia. And it was Du Bois, and to a certain extent, that Washington, even though they were Pan-Africanists, and even Nkrumah, and even the opportunity to, even Nkrumah, all of the African leaders, because Liberia is 200 years old. It is a republic that has never been colonized and never been enslaved. So because of the efforts of my ancestors here, but we open it up to the whole world. And we are still working on it. I just wanted to try to get in before the seminar went off. But this is something that we're working on now, and we're trying to pull together everything. And even if it comes to a point, there's a piece of land there that we would like to buy. Again, we don't want to fight. We don't want to do anything like that. Or no, we just buy it, because Liberia has said that there's a piece of land, it's about 100 square miles of land, and they want to sell it to the Indians of India. But this land, and it's right off from the island. And we are now in a position to offer them at least $1 million for that piece of land. We have that, and we're prepared to do it, and we will do it, because we see this as our last great hope to get on the continent and to be an equal partner, equal to those who have never left the continent. And one thing I suggest that we remember when the slave trade occurred, all of our people were not put on the slave trade. We have done research at Howard University. Dr. Kittle and Dr. Blakely, who did the Human Genome Project, was able to find out exactly what tribe on the continent that we all came from. It was a marker based on the fact that they had been on a special diet of fresh food and vegetables, just what Africans eat. But when they were put on a slave ship and under the stress, they were given only starch. And the starch under the stress of being in the slave trade, they suffered a marker, very much like Irish people suffered in the Irish famine. It shows up in our DNA. But what is important about this is that 3,000 tribes exist on the continent. And what was done is we created a database. And within that database, we were able to go to the burial grounds, compare it to the people living on the soil, and then from that database, when we do our DNA study, it connects us right back to the tribe that we came from. Those tribes that became minority tribes, having been sold by especially the Ghanaian, the Ashantis and the various people, because as you know, most of the slave castles and slave dungeons are in Ghana. But after they were sold into
Pauline, we are trying to make some resolutions, not another lecture, please. So if you can just
I can't hear you very well.
Yes, we're saying we're trying to get some resolutions now. So if you can say what the proposal is, so we can move on.
Well, my proposal is to establish this particular a capital for the Pan-African world, using it as a gateway of entry. That's one. Dual citizenship is the second one. And under the California reparations, it's the African American airline, so that we can transport our people. That is what we're working on.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Sylvia, do you have any suggestions? Sylvia Taylor? Okay. What I gathered from Pauline is
hello?
Yes,
Hello?
go ahead. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I
Hello?
can.
Okay. Suggestions. I mean, we've heard a lot of suggestions tonight. I really like some of the suggestions in terms of us unifying, right? And collectively exchanging numbers, seeing how we can work together as a team. I'm here from the UK, but I am actually Nigerian. My real name is Sila Fatuma Enikeji, Wahapi Teller, proud to say that, from the House of Ilaro, Ogun State. And my father was an Oba. And so therefore I am royalty. Over here in the UK, no, it's not considered. And these are the things that I heard from one of the young men who was talking about our own history and our own identification. A lot of the problem, especially in the diaspora, is we're not proud of who we are and where we came from. And that is due to the bad press, the bad media, the lack of history. We never learned nothing about who we were or where we're going. Unless we know who we are, we don't know where we're going. And I, for one, know who I am because my father made sure that we knew who our history was, hence the name, right? But in all honesty, I'm a grandmother of 6, and I look at the generation of our next generation coming up. They're lost. This is the lost generation. Unless we, as the elders, start to say, okay, we have education within us. We have commerce. We have certain people have businesses. If we can look at those and say, okay, let me see what I can do in certain parts of Africa to bring in more commerce into that environment, because that's who I am. That's where I'm from. But first of all, you've got to know who you are and where you're from. And so I did suggest earlier on that internet, since it's there, it has to be used. But why are we listening to the bad media when we have our own international media, black platforms, people who are debating and talking and having these discussions everywhere in the world? Because we've all been awoken. And those who have really been awoken have known who they are, and Africa is the only way. And we have to see ourselves, firstly, of what we can contribute from the gifts that we've already been given, and we've all been given gifts. Am I talking too much? Hello?
No, you're not. Please continue.
Well, as I was saying, I just think that all of us right here, we know what we need. We have to be the gatekeepers. We have to own our own platforms. And it starts with this new technology, the media. We have to have international television stations that connect together so the word goes out globally to all of us one time. It's the same way what the BBC did when they had that BBC World Service on a boat, talking to everybody in the world, and they got our attention the most. We need to now reverse and take the technology that they're showing us, that we have got, as I think it was Roots Crew said, the technology, we've had that years ago. Right? We're just not identifying with the greatness that is within us. We're just thinking that, we need to have, the international approval from those who we believe are elite and better than us. They stole that from us. And we have to recognize that this is not a war of, it is a war of principality and lies and all of those things, but God will deal with that. We have to deal with what's on this earth. And what's on this earth is lies and deceit. And only until we come together and say, right, we have to deal with our justice, our generation that's coming up, because this is the future. Our children are the future. It's not left to a set of, because if you check what the future is of our children, they're not messing about. And some of them are doing some great things, but the majority of them don't know who they are, just like some of the elders. But we need now to refocus, retune, and, come together. And like what we're doing now and say, okay, what are the solutions? We all know what the problems are, but within us, there are solutions. Anyway, I've done now. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sylvia.
You're welcome, sir.
I think one of the things that came out very clearly is the need for a Pan-African news network that tells the Pan-African story and less reliant on the propaganda stations, whatever they are. So if we have a news network that is Pan-African wide, then we can tell the story of the Pan-Africanists, tell the story of Africa in the real sense and real way. So I got that very clearly, and that's a recommendation that comes from both Sylvia and the previous speaker. And then that will help us to generate our own content, content that we own and we can market to the world. So this is very important. Okay, now I have add one more. Is there any other person who has a contribution or a solution?
I do. I do. You've said you want to hear from the audience.
Yes, yes. Not a lecture now or statement. The solution, a proposal to solve a particular issue. So if you have one, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for the privilege. Permit me to just pick out points. I am a Relutunwashe, born Yoruba, royal and leader. I just want to again say how illuminating. You know, one Odufa told us in Yoruba land recently. He said, "Ọmọ ọkọ ó máa dojú kọ ọmọ àlè kí ilẹ̀ bàbá wa tó tò." It simply means those who are considered to be of our ancestry and they know the right thing and they will have due regard for ancestors and do what they want will be challenged by those who are the opposite. Our ancestors are in charge. Let me first of all thank Ruth's crew. You know, there's the issue of cultural competence. We are talking about education. He or she who is not culturally competent with native intelligence of who we are, who I am in Yoruba land. By the way, I grew up with slaves because my biological ancestors were major slave traders. I grew up with them because they had iron through their mouths and padlocked. They were freed when I was growing up. There are many stories to tell. So native intelligence must be the superior to white man's intelligence. We are faced with westernization or modernization in the interest of clarity for future generations. Sovereignty. We are people with supreme rulers. Now, Eba Amoli Shabi, that is you, Sylvia Teller. I've just given you your Oriki. I want to finally say, we are talking about business. My God, my ancestors, we have native business. We shall continue to develop and bajo our own native way. You know something? What people like me are passionate about is that the white man came to destroy our identity by bringing their so-called education. We Yorubas, we have thousands of professors. Please do not think I'm insulting you. They're absolutely useless. Because what they continue to do is want to destroy who we are. Any Pan-Africanism that is not going to preserve our sovereignty, that is not going to demonstrate cultural competence, that is not going to know that witchcraft is our way, that is not going to know that African traditional doctors are ours. Such a system is going to continue the damages done by the white man I want to rest my case there. Thank you for the privilege.
I have some contribution to make as well, if you
Yes,
may allow me.
We are seeking hard solutions, not
Yes,
not
I
general
want to do
statements.
some resolution points.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Aset Tete, as you can see, and I'm a journalist. I'm an activist. I'm based in France. And I believe we need to have a resolution on intellectual property rights, because you find African countries, when they want to produce, for example, now with the COVID vaccines, there's all these intellectual property issues that come into play. And we know that Africa's knowledge and intelligence was stolen historically. So we have every right to develop, to access. We don't even have to ask for permission. We need to be part of the intellectual property. And we can so that we can safeguard Africa's knowledge, because they're coming to Africa and taking away from our plants and then making vaccines. We have the resources. So this is one of the resolutions. Another of the 3 resolutions I want to propose is that of defense of Africa's sovereignty. And we have 3 pillars of Africa's sovereignty, which have all the time been abused. Today, Africa is not free. We are still fighting to free ourselves since the 15th century, when they came in and took our people away. So we need an aspect of a resolution where we have military and defense sovereignty, where we can integrate in the school education system education that integrates military training for the youth. The rest of the world is preparing. We are told we are getting into a new world order, but Africa is a spectator, and others are strategizing on Africa. And then Africa now has so many military bases. There's a reason for that. There's going to be the next third world war, and Africa is not ready. So we are the only ones who say we don't want nuclear, we don't want anything, and yet others are preparing. So I think we need a resolution on defense of Africa and defense of Africa's rights to determine its destiny. Another resolution which I would like to propose is on a single African currency. We are the only continent with several currencies which are useless. So we need to come up with a resolution and come up with one single African currency, which can also, which we can see how it can integrate with those that are being proposed in the historic African diaspora. And also about coming to education, we need to see how Africa's education system will fit in with the education system that is being proposed in the Caribbean, which fits into our cultural setting and roots. And on this issue of education, there's a problem now existing, for example, in Guadeloupe, which is one of the French Antilles overseas territories. And there's an organization there of Guadeloupean, our people, our Black people, who want to set up a school. And they went through the whole process of setting up this Pan-African school, and in order to teach the children in the Caribbean, in the Antilles, in Guadeloupe, Martinique, and Reunion, to teach our children an education that makes them proud of who they are, know their history, know themselves, because children are traumatized. They're in an education system set up by the French, which actually undermines the Black child coming up and being proud of who he is. He's being taught the wrong history of what our ancestors did. So the African child growing up in these schools feels he doesn't want to relate with Africa. He's really been undermined psychologically. And so they want to set up this school. And recently, the head of this, it's called prefecture, the highest level of government official, ruled that this school is going to create public disorder because it's rooted in a racial orientation, which was not correct, because the directors of the university there had accepted that they meet the standards to set up a Pan-African school. because you'll find even here in France, they have schools of people from Sri Lanka, they have Jewish schools, and they've been allowed to exist. But when it comes to Africa or Black people, suddenly it becomes an issue of separatism and everything, and they are attacked. So we need to find a way how we'll integrate the education system we are imagining for Africa to see how we can fit in with the education system in the Antilles. And then African governments, I want to know what are they doing in terms of a problem like this facing the Antille people. They have ways to talk to governments in these countries. They shouldn't just be coming here for meetings and then they leave. There are real issues affecting Black people in the diaspora. And African governments just come here, meet with the high-level people and leave. There's no time even the African Union chairman has ever come and asked to speak to the diaspora. And then we want an African Union, a resolution on the African Union to be an African Union of the people, not an African Union of institutions. The African people on the ground don't know what African Union is about. People are suffering, like now in Afghanistan, people, others are getting out their people from there, except African. We don't hear Africa, where is Africa going to get our people out there? So there's a lot of real issues. And my last issue is about justice. We want a justice system that works for Africa, that is rooted in our values and systems. We don't want even our leaders being taken to The Hague. We want them judged in Africa if at all there's any problem, because this is our problems. Rwanda set an example with its Gashasha system, which worked very well. It's rooted in their system and people are there to see justice being done. So we want a justice system that works for us and also that works for the people, and an African Court of Justice that works for the people. Because now, as it stands, we find like in the European Union, any common ordinary citizen can go and challenge any government issue that they are not happy about. But in Africa, the African Court of Justice, people don't quite feel its presence in their lives. And Africa's justice system in our countries is not working well. So let us have a resolution on justice, on common currency, on intellectual property rights, so that Africa can begin to set up its pharmaceutical industries for vaccines and all these kind of things. And that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are about to start the closing. I'm going to, Genroy from the Global African, do you have any proposals you think would be worthy of this conference? We are closing in we're going to start the closing ceremony in 5 minutes.
Professor?
Yes.
May I give a short contribution as well, as far as solution is concerned?
Okay. Can you put it in the chat? Because we sort of expanding contribution to mean too many things. Is it specific proposal?
Yeah, it's a solution. Yeah, I'll make it quick.
Okay. After you, then I'll ask Roy to add anything that he has, and then we're going to be moving towards the closing.
All right. May I?
Go ahead, please.
All right. In thinking about all of this discussion, I think there's one obvious solution as well, which is really obvious to this discussion. And I think that is the opening of the borders in the continent. Of course, the biggest dream of Marcus Garvey was a United States of Africa. So it is important to notice that the recent trade agreement that was signed between African countries is a very important step in that direction. So when you think about eliminating the borders which were created initially by the colonial administrative systems, you could see that if we were to open up these borders and open up the movements of our people within the continent, it could, number one, ease the tribal tension amongst people. Because when these lines were initially created, what the colonialists never realized was that they were creating separations amongst communities which would have otherwise been very closely linked to one another. For example, the line in between us and Angola, people can easily go from the other side and meet their family. The line between us and Botswana, people can easily go to the other side and meet their family. The line between us and South Africa as well. You see, our hetero people you find over hetero people in the east of Namibia. If the borders were open, they could move in and out amongst people within an area which is suitable for their cultural practice, which is that of herd livestock farming. If you look in the north, where our people are mostly good in agriculture, such as the Ovambo people, they are good in agriculture. So if the borders were open, it would allow them to be able to link up with the agricultural opportunities which are in Angola. Angola is a suitable place compared to Namibia as far as agriculture is concerned. Much more rain, much more tropical, much more fertile land. If you look at South Africa, you will notice that the Khoisan people and the colored nation of South Africa are closely linked. In actual sense, the colored people are actually descendants of Khoisan in the actual reality. So they have a knowledge of traditional medicines and certain plants and roots which grow a lot around the Cape areas, and also moving into from the southern areas of Namibia. So it would create an opportunity for them to be able to link up, and all of these things can be able to ease a lot of tribal tension, and it could even as well also ease the pressure on the ancestral land issues as well, because we do believe in ancestral land, but we do see it in a much bigger perspective as well, because some people have their ancestral connections to lands which are next to us, but because of these artificial borders, it has created that division, and thus it can increase or motivate that cultural exchange between us, and thus create more opportunities for us to increase economy and all these things. So the elimination of these artificial colonial borders is definitely one of the biggest solutions to all of this, and thus moving towards the direction of the United States of Africa, whereby countries won't necessarily be ruled by presidents. Maybe we can see presidents more in the light of being like governors, and thus that can also eliminate the opportunities for corrupt businesses to activities to happen and such forth like this. One army, of course, can also help some of that. So give thanks.
Thanks very much. Greeting Roots. Thank you for that contribution. I need to say, however, we mustn't mistake or even suggest that the enslavers and the colonialists who drew these lines on our continent did so in error. They deliberately decided to divide our community and our nations. It's not an error. It was a deliberate act of division. It is time that we give serious consideration to eliminate the 1834 Berlin Conference effect on our continent. No president, it seems to me, is willing to look at that in some fear of losing control of their area. But we know their informal borders are crossing all over the place. So many of it is about collection of finance from our people and poor people. So I agree with you entirely with that. I would support also, Professor Earle, the idea of some more effort towards a judicial process for African people that is separate for that the Europeans and others are pushing on our people. You know, we notice in The Hague that the majority of people taken there for trial are our people. When we have so many war criminals within the European Peninsula, I'm still waiting for Tony Blair and George Bush to be arrested, but they never seem to be put on any wanted list or whatever. So we wait. We shouldn't be waiting, but we wait. My proposal, comrade, is the theme that I touched on in my contribution yesterday. We have a situation of, let me call it resistance, for want of a better word, about the recognition of our identity as Africans. And therefore, we must put in our effort the reality of some people's reluctance and how we deal with that, how we engage, because somebody has that reluctance, and we could say that their loyalty might be somewhere else. We need a process of engagement because they look like us, and we will inevitably be encountering and working with them. So we need a definition that those of us who have a different intention in regard to their identity, we need to understand that. We need to take it seriously. If you are saying, well, I'll be a Jamaican forever, or I'll be a Barbadian or an American forever, I just happen to have African ancestry. Okay, that's your position. But we must, I believe in the unification of the willing. And therefore, we must reach out to those Africans willing to work together. Otherwise, we'll be spending a great deal of time trying to hope and expect everybody who look like us will come along with us. So I think that at some point, some genuine effort of recognition that some will not come with us. Some may come with us later on. Some may recognize their Africanness in some latter part. But for now, call all Africans who are clear, and that means Africans on the continent and African in the diaspora, who are clear about the need to build and work seriously in the development of Africa. We really are short of time. So I don't know how you encapsulate that. What I'm saying is that let's not get caught up in a situation where we are waiting for everyone to come on board when we know not everyone will. And how do we make that distinction? I say my terminology is, let us gather together all the willingness, all the willing workers, all the willing champions who want to move this process forward. Thank you, Elder.
Thank you very much. I understand you to be talking about a Pan-African passport. This would be between the diaspora and Africa. It is valid between the diaspora and Africa.
Okay.
It is not valid outside of Africa. Pan-African passport, which permits you to travel into Africa, whichever part of Africa. So towards a policy to develop a Pan-African passport. Is that what I gather you're saying?
Yes, but not only an issue of continental Africa, it must include those nations that are clearly African nations. And we know who they are.
Yes,
so it will be a case of building a greater Pan-Africanist nation. But, you know, I am conscious always of the contradiction that will exist with nations who are refusing the common stolen wealth, or the stolen wealth experience of nations that want to be in the Commonwealth is extraordinary experience. So what are they about, you know? I hear the chaplain voice in the background. I don't know if he wants to intercede on something, but yes, the ability as Africans to be part of that a whole Pan-Pacific of nations that are in Africa, i.e. Haiti's effort to be part of the African Union should be more enhanced. The need and help that they will need in the next few days has to be top of all Africans' agenda. That's as an example. If they were part of the African nation fully, I would hope that the whole of the AU will be mobilizing in a more meaningful way, rather than wait on the European and the Americans to do what they did in 2010.
Can I say something?
And we know what that is.
I would like to say something before it's too late. There's one thing I always wondered: why don't we have airlines flying between Africa and the Caribbean and America? African airlines, because I've seen, and from China, you know, here in China, I learned so much about what's happening between Caribbean and Africa. And one thing that we came to is, why is there not an airline flying between Africa and the Caribbean? It's only 3 hours away from each other. I think this is a resolution. One, two. Why? Is it like this that in China they make so many cheap machinery? Not only machinery. Do you know there's hand machines? I was hearing something about our traditional doctors that they making medicines. Here you have traditional medicine in China. Why don't we connect people who know already? Why must it be Europeans? The Chinese have their own traditional medicine, and trust me, no foreigner can come in that and tell them or make it different or make it better. They're the best.
Okay.
Why don't we hook up with these guys and make it better?
Thank you.
Second reason.
I gather you're saying you need communication between Africa and the Caribbean and Americas. It's a matter of cost. Now, as you know, Nigeria initiated a flight between the Caribbean, but the linkages are not there. So there need to be a policy, because when you put a flight, it has to be economic. It has to be, you have to have internal linkages that are economic. Otherwise, it won't make a lot of sense. So, but the recommendation is to establish or to encourage, not to encourage,
tourism,
to establish flights between Africa and the Caribbean. That would be further discussions would be needed to identify what needs to be done. It's a matter of costs and linkages. We do not have enough linkages to support a flight across the Atlantic or the Pacific, for that matter. So that's why most of our airlines are dying. The linkages are not there.
Yes. Or not even a cruise ship. We have so many cruise ships in the Caribbean.
So
why is there no cruise going to?
We have taken the recommendation. They have to go and do further studies to justify and to motivate it. But the suggestion is well taken.
Sorry for interrupting like that.
on the issue of currency, somebody made currency. Early on, the Lumi was launched as an alternative to encourage inter-country trade for the masses. And that can also be done for the masses outside of the country that originates it. And there needs to be a policy on this currency that will facilitate inter-country trade and inter-country investments. So all these have to be clear. The second one is the policy for our path to citizenship. There must be a path or a policy that makes it clear for the Pan-African or the diaspora to have a clear way of becoming a citizen. It cannot be one country does it this way and one country. There must be a consensus. And that requires AU to be developing a framework for that to occur. But I gathered.
Can I have the chair?
Are you going to add? Yes, who is this?
The chaplain from Local 12, Ethiopian World Federation.
Okay, are you going to, on the resolution, because we don't want another statement.
On the resolution.
Okay, go ahead.
On the resolution, one of the topics I'd like to elaborate briefly is creating servers. We talk about having our own network in particular. In the computer science information technology, Africa needs to create servers for broadcasting, publication, networking, our own WhatsApp, Africa apps, and things like that. That's one of the things for proposal. The other one has been proposed already, just a reminder. The Eco 6 region is the sixth part of Africa, and we are the Eco 6 region. The other part of the state of the African diaspora is that other part. We need to amalgamate all of ourselves around these entities that support the African Union, because the African Union is the capital state of the continent government of Africa. By us keeping together with the entities that are here representing us and being part of all of those entities, not just coming from my little corner here and trying to just bring it in, but me being part of your entity. We all amalgamating all our resources together, concentrating on these main three: the eco-situation, the state of the African DSP, and the AU. Fourth entity is the Ethiopian World Federation. These are all entities working together for the continent and the people of Africa at home and abroad. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think another recommendation which came up in the presentation before by Rupert Lewis was joint research and publication. There's a huge body of intellects out there making publications. And if they can join with African brothers to develop their publication, to develop textbooks, then this would be a tangible way to change the narrative of learning. So that is one suggestion that came up. And in fact, Rupert Lewis was prepared to lend his skill to facilitate this transition. So it would take exchanges both ways to encourage an improved literary and literacy communication and community. Okay, so we have some suggestions as to, we will need to refine them, because it's all well and good to come up with solutions, but there are practical limitations on governments. So we have to look at it to see if we can recognize those limitations and point them to it. Okay, if there's no other suggestion, then I'm going to request the person closing the session. And after that, we will have a period of interlude, musical interlude, cultural interlude. And after that, we can still continue with the chat.
Before we do, Elder, can I just say that one of the things that I'm not sure I heard associated with the passport is the right of return. In other words, the natural right of those of us who were stolen to return and to have access to that passport. So you're right, there need to be a general one right across the continent, but I hope it will include that aspect.
Okay,
can I comment on that briefly? Passport?
Yes.
Can I comment on the passport?
Thank you, Ambassador. Please do.
The passport is really to link with the Africa Free Trade. And in order that all Africans, those in the diaspora and those on the continent, are freely able to move around the continent, that will be issued to them. So they will be able to apply. And I was told that the application for that would be out in September. September seems to be a lot of different things happening. But just last week we were discussing it, and I was told around September, the application will be out. So as soon as I do see that, I will make sure to reach out internationally. But it's specifically for African and African descent. So simply so they can move around freely in business and trading with each other. So it does not include the other man.
Professor Taylor, could I just say a word to Her Excellency Ambassador Jasmine, please?
No.
Yes, you may, Brother Frankie.
I have put my address, Ambassador, in my email address in the chat, and I'm asking that if you could just establish the contact so that we can be contacted as towards the Ethiopian situation, etc. I am the ambassador from Antigua Barbuda to the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, and I'd very much like to establish that contact with yourself, madam.
Brother Frankie, I sit with you most Wednesdays, and they St. Vincent.
Okay, all right.
I expect one of the outcomes of this conference is that the people who are here will get a chance to know each other and to exchange and share. So in the interim, when we are available, let's talk to one another, know one another. On the platform, I think we have to close officially this symposium. So my co-host would like to say a few words before we start the closing.
May I just want very short and to the point. You know, I've sat here for quite a few days and I've listened, and I'm really very, very happy with the level of intelligence our people have and the ideas that we have come up with in terms of going forward. I just have one question to ask. In implementing these ideas internationally or globally, how do we defend it? How, for instance, do we defend our leadership that has been assassinated and killed over the years? And the most recent example would be Libya. How do we defend all of the ideas that we have put forward here in terms of moving Africa forward? I give thanks and praise.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We are not extending anything here. We are giving some suggestions that come out of this conference. We don't want it to look as if it's a political statement. And we understand what you're saying. If the leaders understand what it is that they have to do, then it should be very clear what they need to do. But we're not going to enter the politics of the situation, because that will just compound the issues. We are looking at practical ways to change a system that the politics has failed to do. But we don't want to get into the political arena, because we will also be caught and we will fail, because they have the power. So I submit that the approach we are taking is not one of confrontation necessarily, unless we have the facts, and we can put it forward to get a broader consensus.
No, I think you totally misunderstand me. I am not instituting any conflict with anyone. I am saying from Nkrumah, and I could list at least 20-something leadership through Sankara and on and on, and the last being Libya, that we, in concurrence as Pan-Africanists, supported them, and they have been assassinated by the same people that created the problems in the first place. Yeah. When the brother mentioned about Bush and whoever else in American presidents, and not in The Hague. And I'm saying I would add to that President Obama and Hillary Clinton, who would even more unconscionable, because he's supposed to be the first Black president. And he's the one that instituted or created the ability for his European cousins to destroy Libya. And I'm simply asking, when we put these things in place, no politics, we're talking about the ideas perpetuated on this platform. And we put it in place, how do we defend our leadership and our ideas, is what I'm asking.
Okay.
Give thanks and praise.
There is a suggestion earlier that says AU should generate a mechanism to build and support consensus. Now, if that is a recommendation, now if AU can build a system to support consensus, then that would be a solution where the governments of AU would take a consensus position. But that has never happened. So what it requires is a consensus. On an international issue, AU should take a position which is based on internal consensus. So if it was Gaddafi, no one country or two countries could shift that decision unless it's a consensus. As in the case of Gaddafi, it was two countries that shifted that decision. What I gather you're saying, you need a system to build and support consensus on positions and position Africa on issues of importance to Africa.
Through the chair.
Yes. Okay.
Chair.
Okay.
Can I just say, thank you, Professor. I think there's a misunderstanding. The African Union is there, and there's different sections, including the diaspora sector, that can be written to. They're not going to think, oh, this is happening and that is happening, and we need to do this and that. It's for the nation to write that letter or that proposal to the diaspora section, as well as to the new diaspora sector. She is from Rwanda. I've forgotten her name. The one who came in February had resigned within a few weeks, so the deputy was appointed. I can find her name and get it to you, and her address, which I have somewhere. But it would be wise to write to people. There's an assumption on the continent that only the Rastafarians wants to repatriate to Africa, and that's why it's only the Rastafarians are coming. I said it before, and I'll say it again. The letters need to be written to the governments of the countries that people wants to repatriate to. The changes that needs to be done. There's about 4 or 5 hierarchies in the African Union, as well as, I say, the diaspora sector, which is where the brothers and sisters come in. So I would write to the diaspora sector, email, write, whichever. Right now, most are working from home, but I would still send an email requesting on behalf of the African diaspora. We are the African diaspora. All other diasporas according to country, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Jamaica. The only African diaspora is those descendants of the African slaves. So a letter can be written, and I can send the email address and phone numbers to Professor Taylor that he can disseminate it. When I say disseminate it, it means that individuals can also flood the African Union diaspora section with letters of request, and that's email. Thank you.
I would prefer, you see, I'm not sending it as me. This conference can resolve that a letter be sent on behalf of the several countries that have been represented. But I don't want to be the person, I don't want to personalize it.
I hear you. Professor, would it be wise to set up a core group with representative from this group here around the globe? Because we got quite a few countries in the meeting. So maybe a core group that would take that responsibility to follow up on the ideas that's coming out. Because it would be a shame to finish and we talk about the things and there's no carry on with it.
Okay, thank you. I think that's a good suggestion. I'm going to ask persons who are so motivated and committed to send their names to me so I can establish a committee that legitimizes this recommendation. And also those persons who have attended from day one to now, I would also want you to put your name or your email so that your signature can go with this if it's necessary. Are we together? Is that
yes, we
let's
are.
take a vote. Let's show your hands if you are in agreement.
Yeah.
My hands are ready.
Where's my hand?
Okay. Do I take that to mean there's consensus generally on the way forward?
Yeah, if you want to make a motion, no, I second that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, okay. My co-host from Namibia wants to say something before we ask Mr. The chairman of the National Council for Reparation to close the floor. Go ahead, go ahead.
Greetings to everyone. It's a real pleasure and it's really encouraging. Come on, come on. Yeah. Excuse me, let me just move a little bit far from that situation. But it has been a real pleasure for us to go through this moment, this event, right up to the end, from the 17th of August to today, the 20th of this important month of August. Just give me a moment. Let me just try to go back to the other side and see so that we are very clear.
Maybe I can, while he's getting ready, August is a special month to Namibia too. Our president, Dr. Hake Godfrey Kenkop, was born on this month. So is our second president, Dr. Hifikepunye Pohamba. And so is our vice president, Nangolo Mbumba. They were all born in this month. So it's a big month, as my brother Nkwame was just saying.
Happy birthday
I
to them.
I don't want to greet everyone and say bye-bye alone. Let's talk because we are in this, all of us together. So my sister, please continue and say finish, and then I'll continue. Oh, you are done, eh? Okay, my sister, if you are...
I was just saying while you were busy, while you were getting yourself ready.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah. You know, this August, especially the 17th of August, you know, we start from when Marcus Garvey, when we start celebrating the birth of one of our great leaders. It's not easy. This is 134 years. The question is, after 134 years, you know, should we be still in the same state? Or is there something that we need to correct? We in the media, we are really ready as messengers of our people to deliver the message. And I would really like to thank my co-host, Professor Bill Taylor. This has been his work. Sometimes we fight, sometimes we clash, But what I know is that as an elder, his words are final, not mine. Me, I can just raise concern. So I would like to say that, this the start, is the beginning of what we expect and where we would like to take the work of our ancestor Marcus Mosiah Garvey to. And where we want to take this work of Mosiah Garvey, the destination is already, it's said, one aim, one God, one destiny. That is what Marcus told us. No matter, we don't even believe, in all these other things. That's why, I come back and say, as Rastafari, for us, we are one and the same. When we say we are one and the same, we mean that, each one teach one. What you know and what you believe is important for us to move together as a family. We have to share that together. We see that across the world, everybody is doing it except us. We are none of those, whatever categories that we get classified. You are this, you are this. We are not any of those. What we know is that we are a people, and we can accomplish what any other people on earth have accomplished. These are the teachings of the Honorable Mosiah Garvey. So we are saying that, as a media operator myself, I'm glad to have identified my senior professor that, actually is also a media operator, and we are going to continue. This is a webinar. We are now on top of the information world, and we are not turning back. We are going to continue to engage one another on this level. These webinars will continue. This is just but the first way the continent of Africa and wherever Africans are will continue. We have captured that space. On that note, I would like to wish everybody next week for the Namibian people and all the Africans is one of the accomplishments of, because August 26 was the launch of the armed struggle, which manifested itself on March 21, 1990, when the Boers were kicked out of this. Politically, of course. Economically, the roots were too deep, but we have started cutting those roots.
Thank you, Brother Mokwami. I just want to end with a quote from the great visionary. And he said, nationhood is the only means by which modern civilization can completely protect itself. Independence of nationality, independence of government is the means of protecting only the individual, but the family. Nationhood is the highest ideal of all peoples. This means that we have to work together as a nation, as African, and not as individuals. And this requires commitment to the African philosophy portrayed by the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey. I'm going to call now, and on my own behalf, I want to thank all of you who have spent with us today and the several other days, who have given your thoughts, your wisdom. And I'm going to call on the chair of the National Council for Repatriation to speak. I understand that Mr. Stephen Golding will be deputizing for the chair. Stephen, are you there?
Yeah, Prof.
Yes. Yes, please have the floor, sir.
Yes, greetings everyone. Fabulous contributions by all. I've been in and out. My phone was dying and it's now on a charger, but I do have enough to read a message that was sent by the chair of the National Council on Reparation in Jamaica, Mrs. Lalita Mattis Davis. So let me just pull that up. On her behalf, it says, "It is my pleasure to give closing remarks to the conclusion of 4 days of riveting discourse on the theme, initiated by Professor Earl Taylor, Honorary Consulate of Jamaica to Namibia. These discourses represent the continuation of engagements with Africa as a continent as well as with independent states. Namibia is an important part of the Caribbean-African dialogue. In July 2018, Namibia waived visa requirements for Jamaicans entering Namibia, an action that Jamaica unilaterally took in 2018, waiving visa requirements for Namibians entering the country as an expression of solidarity and support during Namibia's liberation struggle. The government of Namibia recently named a street in honor of Jamaica's first national hero, Right Excellent Dr. Marcus Mosiah Garvey, a clear message of the Jamaica-Namibian connection. Africa for the Africans at home and abroad is a quote that was popularized by our late national hero, the Right Excellent Marcus Garvey. Tuesday, August 17th marked his 131st birthday anniversary, and this symposium served as an ideal way of commemorating his life and legacy. As such, I would like to extend heartfelt gratitude to each person who opted to share in a time of deep reflection while imparting knowledge on African unity, the spinal cord. We are extremely grateful to the Honorable Dr. Julius Garvey, His Excellency Anna Nigi Pondoka, as well as our Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sports, Olivia Grange, for commencing this symposium. The panel discussion, which was spearheaded by Stephen Golding, Professor Rupert Lewis, Evelyn Shilamba, and Dr. Natania Duncan, represented a job well done in reinforcing the objectives of the symposium. The success of Day's 2 presentation is due largely to our learned speakers who led the riveting discussion under the theme Reparation, Repatriation, and Re-education, namely Professor Joseph Diesco, Dr. Tijutonga Elijah Ngware, Ms. Samira Reed, and Dr. Maxine Clark. Additionally, we thank Attorney at Law Bert Samuels and Dr. Michael Barnett for leading the panel discussion so effortlessly. First Man Ray, Honorable Kenyama Brown, Glenroy Watson, Ambassador Jasmine Ross, Dr. Beryl Bateman effectively enlightened us on the state of the African diaspora. Each of their presentations engaged with the audience as they eloquently shared their knowledge, which was further strengthened through the panel discussion. With that being said, Ras Hoshing, Dr. Jelani Naya, and Winston Norman also made a significant contribution to the success of the Day 3 proceedings. The team remains indebted to both Rashida Buchanan, Menelik Nesta Dandada, who closed this year's symposium as the speakers on Day 4. We remain grateful for the way in which they imparted knowledge on African education, leadership, health, technology, and food security in tandem with the day's panelists. The aforementioned speakers, as well as the production team at Namibia Broadcasting Corporation, as well as Professor Earl Taylor, truly contributed to a time well spent sharing in the commemoration of the birth of our first national hero. The team remains humbled and grateful at the overall willingness of all participants to share in this virtual symposium. Special thanks to the Jamaica Public Broadcasting Corporation, PBCJ, Juice TV, Diaspora Development, Namibia Broadcasting Corporation, the communications team at the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, and all our viewers and listeners, well-wishers and friends who have made this day a successful one. On behalf of the National Council on Reparation, we thank you all for your contribution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Golding and Mrs. Mattis. I believe we have come to the formal end, and we're going to we had planned a video, but it seems as if we have outdone our time. So on behalf of the family here and the family in Jamaica, I want to thank everybody, including Mrs. Mattis, the chairman of the National Council on Reparation. And I hope that we have learned something new, and we are stimulated and inspired by what was shared with us by the elders and by our colleagues across the globe. So let me once again thank you all and those behind the scenes that have supported us. We want to big them up, to thank them for that support. And I want to say good night and goodbye. But you should be feel free if you want to continue to dialogue and know each other more. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Prof. Taylor.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Let's give thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate this.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Have a good evening.
Same to you.
May Jah guide and bless you and your family until we meet again. Give thanks.
Be on standby for another webinar, August 26th. But we'll let you know.
All right. So should we do the same thing as yesterday?
Chair, Madam Chair.
Should we do the same thing as yesterday?
Yes, ma'am.
Chaplain?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Yeah.
Can I just make a last little remark because I have to go? I saw one of the ladies, sister from Canada, who said about the reggae music.
Empress Love, yeah.
Empress, we are trying to put a band together. Ethiopian television is coming to talk about it next week. We're putting a reggae artist internationally together to sing about what's going on in Ethiopia and stand up for Ethiopia's sovereignty. It's really to fight propaganda. So yeah, I sent you the email. You're quite welcome to join us. That we can get this on the go. Ambassador, do you want to play the song? No, the meeting is on now for the musicians are now in the meeting. Brother JB is chairing because they've done different organizing of what's happening.
Can you send my apology, please?
Ambassador? Ambassador, would you like to move these folks who are interested in Ethiopia to that forum right now? Because that meeting is also being kept right now. Am I correct?
The musicians are having their meetings right now because they've got a procedure that the producer and the engineer had meeting with them last night. and told them this is what needs to be done. The Ethiopian artist called today as well to say about the Ethiopian television coming to Shashamane to deal with and then there'll be a Zoom meeting with the artists so they can do their talk on what they're doing and stuff like that. So they're really preparing for that for Tuesday for us.
Yes.
So I can't.
I was referring to, we are late about 2 hours for the noon meeting for the music. Am I correct?
No, the Zoom meeting started at 8. So it's like, say about 8:30. And they are going through, they're listening to the tracks right now of all the tracks that's gone in.
I was hoping, should there be anyone here that might be interested in the subject itself to be invited? Is that appropriate?
There's a lot